Maria Blaskop. I watched your video on how to not be culty, and it was really interesting. But it raises a question that I've had for a few years, and you might have the answer, I hope. I've read about Scientology and other cults for years now. I've watched some documentaries and Leah Remini's series. However, even if you all talk about the common goal of saving the world, I don't find any information on how Scientology was trying to save the world. Did they tell you how you would do it? How to serve the cause? Which actions they/you were taking? I tried to search the internet but couldn't find any information about Scientology's activities to save the world, quote unquote. I know they won't, but I'm curious to know how they communicate and act about it. Alright, so there are a couple different levels of this. And it is a little hard to figure out when you look at all of the stuff about Scientology on the internet, how's all this supposed to work? And that's why I've ended up making so many videos talking about it and breaking it all down. But as far as the concept of saving the world, it's kind of a twofold process. The first part is getting everybody involved in Scientology in the first place. Getting them in and getting them on board, because that alone is supposed to bring a sort of a calming effect and bringing truth to people and giving them tools for their lives so that they'll lead more effective, happier, industrious, productive lives. Scientology envisions a sort of utopia kind of civilization where everybody has their place and everybody's doing what they want to be doing, and everything is moving towards the sort of the common good. They don't really think about it a whole lot in terms of the nuts and bolts of how this goes together. It's all very magical thinking and kind of airy-fairy. But this is the general idea, is that, just by their presence and by the application of Hubbard's methods and techniques in real life, that they can improve conditions no matter what area or sphere of activity a person's involved in, and thereby make the world a better place. And of course, there's a bit of a pacifistic idea in Scientology. They're anti-war, anti-conflict. They don't want to damage people in order to save them, like through psychosurgery and stuff, which is one of the reasons why they're so anti-psychiatry. Outdated ideas, but generally well-intentioned ideas. So that's a general kind of concept that exists at the lower levels of Scientology as to how they're making the world a better place. But in terms of saving the world, this is where you get into the belief system of Scientology and the sort of the faith of it, because this involves the OT levels. And at the lower levels, before you get to the OT levels, all you know is that there's confidential information that is of tantamount importance and that everyone has to get to those levels. And you don't really know exactly what's going to happen when they get to those levels. You just know that that's the goal. Get everybody to OT. All right. Now, when you get to the OT levels, and this is stuff that I learned after I got out of Scientology, because it was all confidential when I was in, and I never made it to those levels. But once you find out, and how it's discussed in the church, as far as the OT levels go, is that what you're doing when you're auditing, running through the processes of those OT levels, which include the Xenu thing, but there's a lot more to it. And I've broken it all down in my book because there is so much to it. It's kind of complicated. But the point of those OT levels is to free theta, is called positive spiritual energy. Okay, let's put it that way, or positive life energy. And when you get onto those upper levels, you're not just dealing with yourself. You're dealing with the environment. You're dealing with freeing theta, they call it. Okay, that term again for positive or life energy. And so by what they're, and it's not just freeing new theta, it's that the world is basically in the condition that it's in because of condensed, solidified, hardened theta, which is called in Scientology N-theta, E-N-T-H-E-T-A. N-theta, which means interbulated theta, or theta that has been brought down from its sort of spiritual, light, airy-fairy existence to more of a solid existence. And there's even thoughts at the lower levels in Scientology that maybe matter, energy, space, and time itself consists of condensed theta. Hubbard didn't really go there, but that's kind of a sort of a thought. That maybe the physical universe itself is sort of the antithesis of theta, and that by converting that n theta into theta, you are freeing up life potential, and thereby reducing the tendency or urge of people in this world to violence, to ignorance, to solutions that don't work, right? To nonsense and irrationality. And again, this is all very magical thinking, okay? There's not a lot of basis for this thinking. It's just sort of they're taking Hubbard's word for it. And you get onto these OT levels and nothing that you're doing really ends up producing any of this. But that's what they think they're doing. You know, if you're familiar with the Xenu story and with body thetans, then you're familiar with the idea of these, spiritual entities that are basically asleep or unconscious, and you're waking them up and revitalizing them and sending them on their way. That's the conversion of n theta to theta, okay? And the way it was explained to me when I was in the Sea Org is that the Flag land base, the place in Clearwater, Florida, where they deliver these OT levels and the highest OT levels, is sort of a theta factory. And it just is spewing theta all day long. and that there's such a tremendous amount of n theta that's solidified over all the trillinia of years that we've existed. And that this OT3 thing, which you don't know the details of until you do it in Scientology, so I didn't know what it consisted of. I just knew that it was super important. And that there was some big secret to learn on it, and that this secret involved how we were converting all this n theta into theta. And that there was a lot of work to do, and that we had a balance. It was sort of, if you imagine a scale of n theta and theta, our job was to tip the scale, because right now it was heavily tipped to the n theta side, and we needed to bring more theta and tip the scale. And by doing that, we would literally be changing the conditions of society, and we would be converting our whole civilization to a sort of golden age of enlightenment and reason and theta. And that's kind of how it's explained in the world of Scientology. So you're not going to glean that whole explanation from pretty much anything you're going to read on the internet that I've run across. So I think I've talked about this once before on this show, but it was a long time ago, so it was time for me to explain this all again. And I hope that makes sense. I'm more than happy to answer any further questions on that, but that's what I just laid out is pretty much the Scientology concept of what they think they're doing by doing Scientology. And like I said, if they were, I'd be the first on board, but that's not what they're doing at all. What they're really doing is just making a lot of money off of a very gullible group of people. And that's why I speak out against it, because that kind of nonsense needs to stop.